Section 107 of the Fair Use Act of 1976 provides protection to use copyrighted material for research, analysis, education, and commentary purposes. We here at Loose Moose Productions reserve that right. Now, on with the show. Here's JOEB and the Triple B. Hey, Aunt Udine, how's things in Texas?
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Hands on Triple B and JOEB and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and JOEB. Rock on, get your morality. Triple B and JOEB and Triple B, baby. Triple B and JOEB. Rock on, get your morality. We're coming in. Oh, it's seeking the truth about JFK. Here's the long-going podcast. And here we go.
And here we go.
That's right. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, the Triple B, Big Bad Bob, here with you again, along with the hatless, bearded beast from the Northeast, Mr. Joe Borelli. What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's up, Rob? Good evening, everyone. How was your week?
My week, very slow to get here, but we're here. It's Friday. We're going to have fun. We got a killer show for you, all about Victoria Adams and her story, and it's going to kind of continue a theme out from Roger Craig about people that have claimed that, the Warren Commission kind of messed with their testimony, if you will, or changed elements of their story to benefit the Warren Commission conclusions. So that was the basis of doing this show, and I don't think I've ever done one just about Vicky, but her story is very important and it needs to be told, and it is complicated, but we're going to try to make it as easy to understand as possible. Because if her story is true, then it presents a big problem to the official narrative of the entire assassination and Oswald being the lone assassin. So we'll get into all that, I promise. But I think Joe has something he would like to share with everyone. Hopefully you guys listened to the last Quick Hits episode.
Yes. So I actually have some bad news, Rob. We can't do this topic because we got $100 physical super chat. Every page in the world of the 71 pages of everyone involved that you refer to on.
Oh, no. No.
Someone gave me $100. We'll split it.
$100 is not going through 800 names, dude. There's no way.
Okay, well, let me just say this. I got through about 14 of them, and then I got to Sammy J. Davis Jr. and Ruth Buzzy. And I decided it was bullshit.
Yeah, I think we'll skip doing that, Joe. I'll give you $100 to not do it. How about that?
I'll make two then.
There you go.
One from our other sponsor named, and 100 from you.
Do it on your own time, sir.
Okay.
So I figured we'd start things off a little differently this show. I would like to present, if you will, a new fun fact. It's Fun Fact Friday, people. So I'm from an area in Virginia, kind of nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Shenandoah Valley. About an hour from D.C., but it's country enough, obviously. But I came across a very cool fun fact that I'd like to share with everybody real quick before we get the show started. And maybe it's something we'll do on a regular basis. If you dig it, let me know if you do. If you say, hey, Rob, don't do that ever again, I won't, I promise. Okay, but here we go. Here's a fun story. So there was a fellow by the name of Andrew Pitts and a woman by the name of Martha Stroud. They met and were married in a small Quaker ceremony in Frederick County, Virginia in 1750. That's where I am presently located, in Frederick County. The Quaker presence was steadily growing in the lower Shenandoah Valley during this time. Andrew's father was named John Pitts, and his grandfather was Colonel Robert Pitts, one of the first settlers who came to the Isle of Wight, Virginia, around 1637. Prior to arriving in Virginia, Colonel Pitts was the captain of the ship called Thunder, a privateer out of Bristol, England. So it was a pirate ship. The ship helped the Huguenots in the war against France in 1628, and now he was in America, and the Pitts line had just begun. By 1755, the Pitts of Frederick County had moved to Rowan County, North Carolina. They had followed a new congregation of Quakers who were given permission to build a new settlement and meeting house there. Now, Andrew Pitts died in 1772, but his sons carried on the family name. The eldest son, William, moved away in 1841, marrying his wife Cynthia in Jasper, Alabama, and changing the family name from Pitts to Pitt. By 1870, the family was in Fannin County, Texas. In the 1910 census, the heirs of William and Cynthia Pitt were in Spring Hill, Louisiana. The youngest son, Oliver Pitt, would be born in Texas in 1891. He married somebody named Rosie Doris, and they moved to Oklahoma. And they would have one son named Alvin. Alvin's son, Bill, was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma in 1941, and he would meet and marry Jane Etta Hillhouse. They would have a son born in Shawnee, Oklahoma, who they named William Bradley Pitt. The world would come to know him as the actor Brad Pitt. So, pretty wild stuff.
That is pretty cool.
Fun Fact Friday. Just something neat that happened around me, and if these people would have never met and married in Frederick County many, many moons ago, the world would not know Brad Pitt ever existed. No Fight Club,
No.
No Money Train.
Yeah,
You got no Brad Pitt movies, Joe? That's okay.
I love Brad Pitt. I mean, in a non-Perry Russo type of way, but
yeah, a river runs through it.
Fight Club is a great movie for sure.
All right, so let's get into the Victoria Adams story.
Yes, let's. Thank you, Gregory Stewart, and thank you, John Naylor, as well before the show for your $5 super chats.
Yes. Thank you, fellas.
And thank you, everyone south of the West, Garden Guns, Betty Bungled, Gregory Stewart, Ashley.
Hey, Bungled is a Huguenot. Well, Brad Pitt's ancestors fought y'all. But luckily they did not kill your ancestors, and you're here now. So the world is a much better place with you and Brad Pitt in it. So, but Joe, let's get into a little bit about Victoria Adams. Now, the reason her story is important, okay, is here's what she claims, okay, that her and 3 co-workers were standing on the 4th floor, okay, at an open window. Now, if you're looking at the school book depository from the front, in the upper right-hand corner, that would be the alleged Oswald sniper nest, right?
Yep.
On the 6th floor. So go 2 floors down to the 4th floor and all the way over to the left, but not all the way. It's the second set of windows in. That is where they were. She was standing there with Sandra Stiles, Dorothy Garner, and Elsie Dorman. And I believe Elsie Dorman was filming. There's a Dorman film out there if you want to go see it to get their perspective from where they were standing inside the school book depository as the president came around the corner there. Now, according to Victoria Adams, within 20 seconds, so relatively quickly, She and her friend Sandra Stiles ran to the back set of stairs, ran down the stairs, and out the back of the building where the loading dock was. And they proceeded to try to get over to the railroad yard, the grassy knoll area, because that's where everybody was going. And she says that they were turned back by a Dallas police officer who told them, don't bother coming over here. Just go back in your building, go around the front, go in the building, and stay there, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Now, I don't know what police officer would have been there in that area right after the assassination so if they waited 20 seconds and it took them 30 seconds to get out, so within a minute, there's some kind of police officer back there that turned her away. And she said they came around the building and were standing out front for a little while, talking to some co-workers. I believe Avery Davis was mentioned. Mm-hmm. And what she tells in this interview, and it's not in her Warren Commission testimony, or it might be in her testimony, but not in the report. But she saw a man that kind of caught her attention because of the way that he was acting. And she said that after the assassination, of course, after Oswald is captured, after Oswald is killed, she recognizes the man as Jack Ruby, who is standing on the corner in front of the school book depository asking people questions like a cop, she says. Mm-hmm. She said he could have been acting like a reporter type of thing, or it might not even have been Jack Ruby at all. Who knows? But she said it looked just like Jack Ruby. Okay? Mm-hmm. This is what she says.
Yep, and the Dallas Morning News was only 2 blocks away from the TSBD. Yeah. So...
And then she proceeded to go back inside the school book depository until everybody was cleared. You know, she went back up to her office, blah, blah, blah. Now, the interesting thing is the Warren Commission, David Beelan specifically, when they came to take her testimony, they only wanted to talk to her. She told them that she was with somebody, Sandra Stiles, and they didn't want to hear from Sandra Stiles. You know, and she told him, look, if you think I'm mistaken about my timing, then go get a stopwatch and let's do a reenactment timing wise so you can see exactly when it was that I went down the steps. And the problem with all this is because she didn't see anybody on the steps. She didn't see Lee Harvey Oswald going down. She didn't see Truly and Baker coming up. So this is a problem. Okay, because miraculously, all of a sudden, according to the official story, we have Oswald in the second floor lunchroom and Truly and Baker. Now, some people write this off as Oswald beat her down the stairs, and all Oswald, Truly, and Baker were all in the second floor lunchroom when she and Sandra came down the stairs. Therefore, she didn't see anybody. The question is, could Oswald take the final shot, within 20 seconds, run all the way across the warehouse floor, hide his gun down in between a pile of boxes, run down past the 4th floor to the 2nd floor without being seen or heard by Sandra Stiles? Because she even says, if anybody was on those steps, running down the steps, you were going to hear them, whether they're on the 6th floor, 7th floor, 2nd floor, whatever. Because it's a wooden stairway. It's an old wooden clunky stairway that creaks and, you know, clops, and, you know, you're going to hear somebody running down or running up the stairs.
Yeah. And Rob, in the interview that we're going to play some parts of, she even told the difference between a footprint, like a guy, and a stomp, like AKA like a heel. Like she made that differentiation.
Yeah.
And you have to think, like, you know, she's we're going to show you a graphic. She's 20, 30 feet away from the stairs in her office on the 4th floor. She would probably be able to tell if a guy or a girl was coming down based on the sound, right? Because you're going to have heels. It's going to be a clunk. That's what she did. A clunk and whatever else she described it. We have the audio, but it's interesting. She made that different, that difference, you know?
Yeah, because there was an interview that just came out recently within the past year of Victoria Adams, Mark Lane on the Mort Saul show in 1966. And I'm going to put the audio of it up on this channel, you know, from the vault, for everybody to listen to the entire interview in its entirety. If you're so inclined to learn more about what she said, because there's a lot of interesting things that she said that, you know, we can't just do justice talking about it. Now, so we got a couple clips here and here about it. But, you know, another thing that the Lone Nerders will try to say was, well, she was so fast that she beat Oswald and Baker and Truly down the stairs. And she made it out of the back of the schoolbook depository before Baker and Truly even got into the building. Which is hard to believe if you watch some of the footage like the Darnell film, where I know, you know, Bart says that you don't actually see Marion Baker, who is in the film running across Elm Street. You don't actually see him go in the depository right away. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he didn't. We just don't see it. Okay? But according to all of the testimony over the years from Truly and Baker, they pretty much went in instantaneously. And then there's some other oddities with Lovelady, Billy Lovelady, and Bill Shelley, which we'll get into later. But before we do, let's start with... I guess her Warren Commission testimony, Joe, if you want to pop that up.
Sure.
Pop it up. Hopefully our audio issues are fixed. If they're not, if I sound low, let me know.
If I sound high, let me know, please. Yeah, so this is on April 7th, 1964. This is the first introduction. It's Mr. Beeland, and you can see here on the right side one of the corrections that we'll get into later that she made. She wasn't employed as an office survey representative and office service representative. Now, service survey, you could easily see how that could get confused, especially if you're
I was explaining to Joe, when she's giving her testimony to Beelan, there is a stenographer taking her testimony in shorthand. Okay. And then this stuff is typed up later. Okay. Which is why they're given the option to come in, reread it, sign it. Before it goes to print or, you know, or whatever.
Right.
So, you know, this is not necessarily nefarious if certain things get changed, like, you know, Roger Craig's case of a light colored Rambler or a white colored Rambler, or, you know, when somebody says officious as far as effectuous or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Or, you know, she was in office. What'd you say, Joe? In office what? Survey?
Survey is what they initially said, but she corrected it and said service. So, I mean, you're talking about really similar words here.
Yeah, this is just somebody that sucks and is taking shorthand, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very good at it. It's quite evident throughout just a ton of people's testimony.
Yeah.
That actually went back and reread it, checked it, and made their changes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into all that later.
Yeah.
Because we have a good clip about all these changes too by the Warren Commission. But please continue, Joe.
Yeah, I have one more. This is also her Warren Commission testimony, and I'm going to just go down to the bottom paragraph. And after the third shot following that, and initially she said it was just fireworks. The third shot, I went to the back of the building, down the back stairs, and encountered Billy Shelley and Billy Lovelady on the first floor on the way out to the Houston Street dock.
Right.
So,
and here's the first problem. Because if she would have encountered Shelley and Lovelady on the first floor, then she would have to be mistaken about how long it took her to get to the first floor, which is what the Warren Commission was trying to do with her testimony, because she is what they called a problem that they didn't know how to solve. So they ended up changing her testimony to say that she saw them on the first floor as she came down the stairs, when she actually saw them after she had already come back, after she had come back in the building, after she'd gone out the back door, after they tried to get over to the grass, after they walked around, after they talked to people out front, and then came back inside. That's when she saw them standing on the first floor back by the elevators.
Yep.
Guarding them.
Telephone.
Guarding them. So that is a pretty substantial change by the Warren Commission to do that, because then they could explain away her testimony as, well, she's simply mistaken about how long, she was in shock after the shooting and lost track of time and this, that, and the other. She was one problem. That's why they didn't talk to Sandra Stiles. That's why they didn't talk to Dorothy Garner or Elsie Dorman. Because they didn't want to have to deal with 4 problems. Yep. One is bad enough. So
you don't want corroborating witnesses on this type of thing, because it did really give them a lot of problems, and that's why she was interviewed by the Secret Service, the FBI, the Criminal Intelligence Division of the DPD, and allegedly she said that she was approached by Lavelle, of course. And she said, were you the guy that was handcuffed to Oswald? And he allegedly was threatening to her in a sense. And
well, I happen to have that interview of Vicki Adams by James Lavelle that was done on February 17th, 1964.
Okay.
So this is his report. It's not it doesn't have the interview notes. This is just a report he wrote afterwards. Oh. Says, I talked with Vicki Adams at 8:10 p.m. this date, February 17, 64. The following statement is what she said happened on November 22nd, 1963. My name is Vicki Adams, 3909 Cole, apartment D, no phone. My job is office service representative. I reported to work that day at 8:30 a.m., and I worked in that capacity until noon. A friend of mine, Elsie Dorman, who lives in Oak Cliff and works in the office, wanted to take some moving pictures of the motorcade. I opened a 3rd floor window, about the 3rd one from the front of the building. She took pictures of the motorcade. When the president got in front of us, I heard somebody call him, and he turned. That is when I heard the first shot. I thought it was a firecracker. Then the second shot, I saw the Secret Service man run to the back of the president's car, and after the 3rd shot, I went out the back door. I said, I think someone has been shot. The elevator was not running, and there was no one on the stairs. I went down to the 1st floor. I saw Mr. Shelley and another employee named Bill. The freight elevator had not moved, and I still did not see anyone on the stairs. Now that's interesting, because not only is the story in the Warren Commission testimony, but now all of a sudden it matches Lavelle's report from February 17th. Right? Some 3 months earlier. But now if she did see Shelley and Lovelady on the 1st floor, as soon as she came down the stairs, then that means that Shelley and Lovelady were lying about what they did immediately after the assassination. Because they claimed that they stayed out front, that they walked down towards the grassy knoll, and that at some point they too were turned away and told to go back, which they did, which would have taken a considerable couple of minutes to happen. Okay?
For sure.
So that's what they said they did, right? And supposedly there's a GIF. It's part of might be part of the Darnell film. I'm not sure. But apparently it shows what appears to be Shelley and Lovelady walking away from the entrance of the school depository down Elm Street. It's not definitive by any means. You cannot make a definitive identification of either person. It's just somebody in a suit and somebody in a shirt.
That looks like Lovelady's flannelish shirt that he had on.
Yeah, and they're kind of heading away from the entrance. But again, it's not definitive. But if that's not them, okay, in the movie, and they possibly knew that something was going on and went back in the building on the first floor back by the elevator so soon after the assassination or after the shots were fired that Vicki Adams did in fact meet them on the first floor as she came down the steps, then that opens up a whole other fish as to how the assassins got in and out of the building without being seen. But we'll cross that bridge here in a little bit. It says, I ran out the back door of the depository and around to the front. I started down toward the railroad tracks when an officer stopped me and turned me back. I asked the officer if the president had been shot, and he said he did not know. As I turned, I saw another employee, Joe Molina, standing by the front of the building facing Elm Street. I stopped and talked with Avery Davis, another employee. I saw two men in street clothes. One was gesturing with his hands and asking questions. I asked Mr. Davis who he was. I later saw Jack Ruby on TV and thought it was the same man. No one had surrounded the building by this time, and I went back into the building and to the passenger elevator, but the power was off. I went to the back of the freight elevator. There was two plainclothes men on it. However, the power on it also was turned off. I walked up the stairs to the fourth floor to my office, and we were later told that we could leave. This concludes Miss Adams' statement to me. J.R. Lavelle. So what do you think about that there, Joseph?
I mean, she talks about in the interview we're going to play a couple clips of that Lavelle visited her, and she alleged that he threatened her or made her feel uncomfortable, and that corroborates that. I definitely think Lavelle did pay her a visit a few weeks after, and she was a problem. I mean, it didn't fit the narrative. And when you talk about Sandra Stiles, she later, and we'll read a little statement from her that she made in 2008 to a researcher, but she kind of pushes back on some of what Vicki Adams says, and says she might have exaggerated some of it. And so,
she lying.
I mean, listen, it's 40 something years later. We're going to read it and put it all in context, and let the listeners decide for themselves, because it is a really interesting statement that she said. And
well, before we do, a fun caveat to the James Lavelle interview is the claim of why he was interviewing her, because at this time she'd already been talked to by the Dallas police. the Secret Service, the FBI, right? James Lavelle claimed that he was there because a fire had broke out at the DPD and destroyed a bunch of witness statements.
Yeah.
Now, that's a new one to me.
Me too.
Because I'm pretty sure we have a good bit of these original statements. I've never seen any burned or partially burned or heard that referenced as an excuse to go back 3 months after the assassination to re-interview somebody. As important a witness as Victoria Adams was. So very, very odd behavior from James Lavelle.
Yes.
Lavelle.
Yes.
Lavelle.
Let's play a clip or two from the 1966 interview of Victoria Adams with Mark Lane and what is it, Mark Saul?
Mort Saul, yeah, the comedian.
Yeah,
the
and
funny man.
Mark Lane really takes like control of this interview.
Well, I think Vicki Adams takes control of this interview. As you're about to hear, she is a very intelligent, strong woman.
Very
articulate, very smart, and very sure about what she saw.
For sure.
Roll it, Joe.
All right. And
why don't you?
Which one do you want to do? The Ruby one?
Sure.
Discuss what happened here. Now, there are two witnesses, according to the Warren report, who said that during the first 5 minutes of the assassination, they were watching the rear of the building and they saw no one enter or leave. These two witnesses I saw, who were standing here. They were talking together and were not even looking at the building. One was a Dallas policeman and the other one was a man in a suit. Now, who they were, I don't know. But at any rate, I proceeded back this way and around the building and approximately to this location here, where I was encountered by a policeman.
Why did you go this way?
Because that's where the majority of the people were.
In this direction?
They were running over that way. And I wanted to find out where the action was. So this policeman here told me to get back to the building, get back to the front of the building, which is what I did. So I continued running down this way and stopped approximately here, which is almost the front of the Texas School Book Depository building. While I was there, I encountered one of my fellow employees named Mrs. Avery Davis, who is no longer with the same company. And I just said, well, you know, what in the world's going on here? I was confused myself. I didn't know for sure if the president had been shot or what was going on. So I said, well, I'm going to listen to the radio on a police motorcycle, which was approximately in this position here, a three-wheeler. So I listened to that, and there were reports that said something about the president has been shot, Governor Connolly has been shot, Vice President Johnson has been shot. Everybody in the world was shot on that corner. And I wanted to find out what was going on. And then they said that there were the shots were either from the second or the fifth floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Well, that made me a little nervous because I had been on the fourth floor at an open window. So I was debating just at that point about whether or not to go back into the building. And right here on this corner, there was a man standing there who was dressed in a suit and at the time had on a hat. And I spoke with Mrs. Davis and I said, who is that man? Because he was asking questions as if he were a police officer. You know, he acted like he knew what was going on, and people then weren't acting like anybody knew what was going on. And so I said, I wonder what he's doing there. Maybe he's a reporter. I said, maybe he's with the Secret Service. I wonder what he's doing. But it was very relevant, and this is in my testimony, but it's never mentioned in the Warren report. Now the question is, who was that man? And later on, because he made such a strong impression on my mind, his face stuck with me in my memory. And then several days later, I saw on television a man that looked very similar to him. And
who was that man?
That man was Ruby. Discuss what happened.
And was Ruby.
Ruby,
Ruby.
do you
Yes.
know any
Go
other
ahead.
people that alleged Ruby was in Dealey Plaza? Was
I
there one?
have seen a photograph alleging that it's a picture of Jack Ruby in Dealey Plaza.
Mhm.
And also, there was that document that came out back in the 90s about him actually being in Dealey Plaza, watching the motorcade with somebody, and said, you know, it's like something he wanted to see the fireworks for himself, the famous fireworks document.
Mhm.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could have been in Dealey Plaza. The last time he was cited was at like what, 11:30 at the Dallas Morning News. You know, and he claimed he stayed there for a while, and that's where he was during the assassination. But I don't think anybody ever corroborated that, to my knowledge, unless it was Tony Zoppi, who was his buddy that he went to Cuba with, but that it would probably lie for him. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. So, you know, it's entirely possible. I mean, he was everywhere that weekend that we know of. I mean, my God. I mean, if he was in Dealey Plaza, it wouldn't surprise me. If he was at Parkland, it wouldn't surprise me. He was even alleged to be seen in the Texas Theater by George Applin. So, you know, who the hell knows? But it's crazy to think about.
It is. It's
Yeah,
absolutely nuts.
Sally just brought up about there was a document. A couple women say they saw Ruby hand Oswald a gun in the plaza, and there's also the Julia Mercer allegation that she saw Ruby, take a gun case out of a truck and go up the grassy knoll before the assassination took place. But who knows? You know,
Yeah, the morning of, right, with the air conditioning truck or something.
Yeah. So very interesting stuff. Now I also have here an FBI interview from March of 1964. So this is after she talked to Lavelle, but before her Warren Commission testimony. So again, this is a re-interview for the umpteenth time. This is before she even gets to the Warren Commission. Now this is the FBI. I, Victoria Elizabeth Adams, freely make the following voluntary statement to Eugene Petrakis and A. Raymond Switzer, who have identified themselves to me as special agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I am a Caucasian female, white girl, born February 8th, 1941. That's one day for my birthday, Joe. At San Francisco, California, and I presently reside at 4906 Winona, Dallas, Texas. I am employed as an office service representative by Scott Forsman and Company, room 401 of the Texas School Book Depository Building at 411 Elm Street, Dallas, Texas, and was so employed on November 22nd, 1963, the day President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. She is very thorough, let me tell you.
She is.
On November 22nd, 1963, at about 12:20 p.m., I was in my office and I went to the sixth window from the left to watch the presidential motorcade. Also viewing the parade with me were Elsie Dorman, Sandra Stiles, and Dorothy Garner, all employees of the Scott Forsman and Company. I recall that at about 12:30 p.m., just after the car carrying President Kennedy had passed on the street below, I heard 3 loud reports, which I first thought were firecrackers. But when I saw all the confusion on the street below, I knew they must have been shots. After the third shot, I observed the car carrying President Kennedy speed away. Sandra Stiles and I then ran out of the building via the stairs and went in the direction of the railroad where we had observed other people running. We had not gone far when a police officer stopped us and instructed us to return to the building, which we did. I never knew Lee Harvey Oswald, but I believe I did see him on one occasion in the depository building about 2 weeks before the assassination. I did not see him on this day President Kennedy was assassinated, nor did I observe any strangers in the schoolbook depository building on the morning of November 22nd. I believe I left the Texas Schoolbook Depository building that day between 2 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. on November 22nd, and I went home. So that is her FBI statement in March. No mention of Lovelady and Shelley. No mention of really a lot. But one other interesting person that I want to touch on real quick is Dorothy Garner. Now, she wasn't interviewed by the Warren Commission either, and she did not run down the stairs with Vicky and Sandra, but she did follow them out to the landing, the 4th floor landing. I guess she thought better, or for whatever reason, she didn't proceed down. And this is what she says.
She was the manager of, she was the most senior of the girls on the stairs.
She confirms that Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles left almost right away. She says, I remember them being there, and the next thing I knew, they were gone. They had left very quickly, within a matter of seconds. There was this warehouse or storage area behind our offices, out by the freight elevators and the rear stairway, and I went out there. Garner went to this area immediately after Adams and Stiles had left, and although she did not see them enter the stairwell, she could hear them running down the stairs as the stairs were very noisy. She stayed at that spot alone, out on the 4th floor landing, people, and other office workers joined her to have a look outside the west-facing windows to see what was happening in the rail yard area. And more importantly, the area around the grassy knoll and the picket fence where many bystanders had converged at. The gathering of these office workers is confirmed by Bonnie Ray Williams' testimony as he arrived on the 4th floor from the 5th floor, where we saw all these women looking out the window. This tiny element by itself confirms Adams and Stiles' immediate descent from those stairs, in contradiction to the Warren Commission version of her story. Garner herself was in the perfect position, who came up and who went down those stairs, and when asked whether she saw Lee Oswald coming down those stairs, she laughed at the question. No, I don't remember that. I don't remember seeing him at all that day except on TV. Now, this is important for many reasons.
Yes, sir.
Because not only did Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles not see anybody on the stairs coming up or going down, Dorothy Garner didn't see anybody on the stairs coming up or going down until Bonnie Ray Williams came down from the 5th floor. And according to what they said, it was a while before they left the 5th floor. Like, they didn't come down immediately after the shots. So not only was Garner on the 4th floor landing, but many other office workers too. And this was confirmed by Bonnie Ray Williams when he got there. And not only, did Garner not see Oswald, she didn't see Truly or Baker either. And they supposedly ran up to the 5th floor, got on the elevator, went up to the 7th floor, and then came back down to the 6th floor and the 5th floor. So what in the Sam hell is going on around here?
What? It's all going to hell down Texas. But this is a diagram of the 4th floor, and this is the private offices here, and you can see a kind of scale. I don't know if you can, but this is like 10 feet, 20, 30, 40, 50, and this is where I think the women on the stairs were looking out. around this area, which was 2 floors up or 2 floors up allegedly and 2 to the right. And you see in the back near the top of the screen the elevators, which they went to initially, realized it wasn't.
She said that the big area back there in front of the elevators is warehouse space.
Yeah, open storage space, it says.
Yeah, so she says she ran out the back door of the offices of the 4th floor and into that warehouse space and then back to the corner where the back stairs are as the elevator wasn't working.
Right, so she stopped at the elevator and then went to the corner to the L-shaped stairs. And yeah, it's really hard to miss Oswald and then to miss Truly and Baker. You have to kind of question the timeline almost. And I don't know. It's one of the things I was reading and our good friend Bart Camp wrote the book Prayer Man, and if Oswald was Prayer Man and was on the 4th floor, and there's a lot of evidence that he was on the 4th floor 15 minutes before the assassination, wasn't eating lunch in the domino room and like he usually did, that of course the Vicki Adams and Sandra Stiles would not have seen Oswald because he was on the 1st floor, maybe going up to the 2nd after the shots. And that would kind of make sense in terms of the 2nd floor encounter, if you believe that. And it's just really interesting to ponder, and who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's conspiracy fodder to say that, okay, she didn't see anybody coming up or down the steps. That means that nobody was on the 6th floor, or Oswald wasn't on the 6th floor. That proves it, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But Oswald's coming from 2 floors up. He has to go across the entire length of the building before he hides the rifle. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we don't know what his original, or whoever was up there, what their original plan was as far as hiding the rifle, how they were going to get off the 6th floor. Did they plan on using the fire escape? Did they plan on using the elevators? Or did they plan on using the stairs? The stairs would be like the worst possible choice, because the possibility of being seen coming down from that high up in the building, the chances of being caught go dramatically up. But if the elevators weren't working and maybe the window was jammed by the fire escape, he didn't have a choice. And it's quite possible to me that Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles would have made it down the steps ahead of whoever was on the 6th floor. Because if they left the window immediately, they were already two floors down, and they had to run a much shorter distance to get to the back staircase. And if you look at the 6th floor, it was a total cluster F. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how whoever was up there got all the way to the other end in this jumble and maze of boxes. You can see this. You can see the sign right there, okay, that's pointing to the stairway to the right, and you can see the western. Is it the western, Joe? These are the south-facing windows to the grassy knoll. It's right there on that side of the building.
It might be the west. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, it was just a mess up there. And then this is a view of the 6th floor, and the alleged sniper's nest window is straight ahead. Okay? And then you can see that this section of floor has been cleared. You can see boxes to the left, 5 or 6 high, piled up along the wall, covering high enough to cover the windows. And you can see boxes on the right stacked up behind this, behind the what do they call this? The structural integrity poles there. I don't know what they're officially called.
Yeah.
But the poles that hold up the the headers or whatever they're called. Because that morning on the 6th floor, they were replacing sections of the floor.
Yeah.
They had already done the 5th floor, and they had started on the 6th floor. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, and I've always said this, that the so-called sniper's nest was not built by somebody that was up there trying to hide. It just happened to be formed from the way these boxes were moved out of the way so that they could replace the floor. Now, it's interesting that you don't see, stacks of wood or plywood and saws and pencils and tape measures and all whatever the hell else you need to do, pry bars and all that stuff. When you're working on a floor to replace it, you got to pry the old one up. You got to put the new one down, but you have to make cuts probably here, probably there. You got to measure things.
Not to
Where
mention
all that stuff is, I don't know.
Yeah, not to mention the unpredictable aspect of who is going to be on that floor at the time, right? Like a lot of people went down, like the a lot of the African Americans were on the 5th floor. You had a lot of people on the steps. Who knew who would be on the 6th floor at that time? I mean, Wesley Frazier said he ate lunch in the basement. So,
Yeah.
Why couldn't he eat it on the 6th floor if he wanted a better view? Like, you would never know that if you were studying.
Bonnie Ray Williams was up on the 6th floor eating his chicken bone sandwich, smoking a cigarette. Supposedly there's an assassin sweating bullets hiding over in the corner like 10 feet away from him that he doesn't hear. I mean, what if Bonnie Ray Williams never would have got up and went down to the 5th floor? Or what if he did encounter somebody up there and they were like, hey man, might be in your best interest to get the hell off this floor. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you didn't see nothing. Got it? Yes, sir. Yeah. I didn't see nothing. But who knows what the official story is there. But I can tell you folks for sure, this screenshot from the movie JFK by Oliver Stone never happened in real life.
No, it did not. And
this is his interpretation of Oswald coming down the stairs and passing Victoria Adams and then Dorothy or Sandra Stiles on the stairway.
Yeah. So what I read, Rob, was that they knew that, right? But they were making it a point to kind of
how
showcase
ridiculous it. Yeah.
Yeah, and like have it be like almost a pun. I don't know what the right word is, but like a shot at that whole situation in terms of Oswald running down and the timing and how he didn't run into anyone, how he was on the 2nd floor encounter, 2nd floor lunchroom, and I think that's a good time because we have a lot of comments, Rob, here.
Yeah, go ahead and catch up. I'm just going to pop this up here real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so this was a thing before Barry Ernest actually ever wrote this book. As you know, you can tell from the Mark Lane interview from 1966 and Mort Saul and something that was definitely up, with the police and the FBI and the Warren Commission changing things. But Barry Ernest's book, The Girl on the Stairs, definitely did a very good job of encapsulating everything. I mean, he tracked her down and talked to her again when she clarified a lot of things. He interviewed, Sandra Stiles and Dorothy Garner, and all of them pretty much said the same thing. But I highly recommend this as one of my favorite books on the assassination because it not only goes into stuff like this, but it also tells a lot about Barry Ernest as a JFK researcher in the 1960s, of him, kind of sneaking into the school depository, talking to Roy Truly, who, he asked for a tour and he says no, but then he goes and sneaks off anyway and kind of, runs around the school book depository, kind of seeing what he wants to see anyway. It tells about his interaction with local Dallas attorney Carol Jarnigan. It even goes into Joe when Barry Ernest saw, when we go back to the Martins, and Gary Schoner. He saw Gary Schoner in Philadelphia after he had gotten the piss beaten out of him in the alley. So there's all kinds of cool stuff in this book. It's not just all about this, but I highly recommend this book to anybody out there. Even though Barry didn't want to come on my show many years ago and talk about his book, I still highly recommend it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Joe, let's get into what else you got there.
Okay. All right, let me play one more clip for you, if you want.
Play it, and then I got one for you.
Oh, man.
We'll trade clips.
Trade clips. I like it.
So what's this clip about, Joe?
I want you to feel badly. Let me tell you what the commission did to almost everybody who disagreed with the commission's preconceived conclusion.
Oh, you're stealing my clip.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds better.
These are quotes now about how the commission handled the testimony. The commission, quote, could not accept important elements of Deputy Sheriff Craig's testimony, close quote. Mrs. Randall was, quote, mistaken, close quote. Governor Connolly, quote, probably was mistaken, close. Shot, too, but mistaken. He was probably shot also, yes. Frazier, quote, could easily have been mistaken, close quote. Daniel's testimony, quote, merits little credence. Rowland was, quote, prone to exaggerate, and there were, quote, serious doubts about his credibility. Whaley's memory was, quote, inaccurate, and he was, quote, somewhat imprecise, close quote, and, quote, was in error. Cantor, quote, was preoccupied, close quote, and, quote, probably did not see Ruby at the Parkland Hospital, close quote. Mrs. Tice was in error. Wade, that's the district attorney, quote, lacked a thorough grasp of the evidence and made a number of errors. Weitzman was, quote, incorrect. Mrs. Helmick's, quote, reliability was undermined. Ruby and Shanklin were misquoted. The doctors at Parkland Hospital were misquoted, and they were also in error. Mrs. Connolly's testimony, quote, did not preclude a possibility, close quote, that it actually did preclude. Mrs. Kennedy's testimony about the wounds in the president was deleted. Mrs. Rich was not even mentioned in the report, and Mrs. Clemens' existence was tacitly denied. Well, this is how the commission dealt with testimony which was inconvenient, and your testimony was very inconvenient, because if your estimate of what took place is accurate, then Oswald could not have gotten from the 6th floor to the 2nd floor, and he was found on the 2nd floor, and he couldn't get there from the 6th floor, and there's only one set of stairs, right?
Right.
And the elevators were not working.
Right.
Were not
they were
working
not
at that
operating.
time, according to all the testimony, the officer and Truly. So if Oswald didn't get down those stairs when you were there, if your testimony is accurate about when you were there, of course you must be wrong, because
No, also wait
assassin.
for a minute, then I want to talk about Jack Ruby. We can't.
Sorry, Rob. Can you hear me? Oh. You're muted.
What'd you say?
I said, did you hear that okay? Sorry.
Yeah. You said you want to get in some comments? Go ahead.
Yeah. Let me scroll up a sec. Let's see. Alpha 66 said the Dallas Morning News building was from 63, is 5-6 blocks south of the TSBD building. I was just going off of what, when we posted the interview on the vault, you'll see that they said Mark Lane and Victoria Adams said that it was only 2 blocks away. And the last sighting of Ruby was 15 minutes before the assassination and 15 minutes after the assassination. And there was a gap which he could have gone to the TSBD. Now, do I believe that? I don't know. But that's what she claimed. So,
like I said, I don't know of anybody who put him at the Dallas Morning News building at the actual time of the assassination. And if they did, it was Tony Zoppi, who was his buddy, his Italian buddy, if you know what I'm saying, who went with him to Cuba. So, yeah, I don't know.
He was an associate in this thing of ours.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very, I agree. Like, he wasn't accounted for during the assassination, but I don't know who else other than, Vicki Adams said that she saw him. It's definitely not one of those like corroborated sightings. There's definitely not a picture of it. I remember her in her interview. She said, well, he was wearing a hat, but in this picture, this guy's not wearing a hat, but I guess you could take off a hat. He's like, yeah. And like Mark Lane, like jokes like, yeah, I believe hats are removable. Like, it's silly, but.
Paula Jane says LHO wouldn't be in the building at all if Roger Craig is right. Well, that's not necessarily true. He just saw somebody running down the side of the building shortly 10 minutes after the assassination. If it was Oswald that he saw, Oswald could have definitely been in the building and just got out of the building and then came down the hill and whistled and got picked up. So it doesn't necessarily preclude Roger Craig. And yes, bungled, wiped prints off the rifle too, if there were any prints on the rifle at all. Because we know the paraffin test did not conclude or didn't find any paraffin on his face, which it likely would have been had he fired a rifle recently. So if the rifle was planted by someone, surely they would have been smart enough to wipe down the rifle first. And yes, Bungle, the word I was looking for is columns. I'm an idiot. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. That's why we have our loyal followers and to help us out sometimes.
Yes. Let's see. Someone on Facebook suggested the paraglide. He paraglided from the roof the other day. Oh my God. Next week, he parachuted it all out of the 6th floor window with an umbrella. Like Mary Poppins.
And Roy Hargraves.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, it's
and somebody said Mark Lane is sus, yeah, and Paula wants to know why he's sus. He saved us a lot on video. Yeah, I said, Mark Lane did some good work, allegedly. Some might say that he was controlled opposition from the very start.
Of course I do.
That's debatable. I mean, the FBI definitely had some dirt on him. Apparently Mark Lane was a bit of a freakazoid in his personal life, if you get what I'm saying. He liked pliers on his nutsack, among other things. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Hoover or the CIA could have blackmailed this guy into being a disinformation agent, if you will. There's lots of allegations of Mark Lane paying for testimony, lying to some people, and the whole thing about Jim Jones and what's that called, Joe? That happened down there?
What?
In Guyana, Jim Jones drank the Kool-Aid. Like Mark Lane was one of the only people that made it out of there alive with a briefcase full of money.
I'm not familiar with this.
You know, was it the People's Temple?
I don't know.
You never heard of this?
No. Please explain, sir.
It was back in the 70s. This guy, Jim Jones, had moved a cult down to like Guyana and bought a bunch of land and had all these people living there. And then he gave them all Kool-Aid that was laced with like cyanide and killed like hundreds of people. And Mark Lane was there, and he was one of the few people that escaped with a briefcase full of money.
I honestly am.
Somebody help in the comments. What are we talking about here?
No, they have here.
It was called something.
EV says, yes, Lane was deeply involved in the People's Temple. Dave says Lane was blackmail material. That the FBI...
Mae Brussel was big about Mark Lane being controlled opposition.
Yeah.
Jonestown. Thank you, Scott. Jonestown.
That's what it is.
You've heard of that before?
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Jonestown.
That is crazy. And I want to bring it back to quick hits for a second. Because I was polled. I was the first person to have
Paul, better late than never.
Yes. I was the first person, and you made a really funny comment because Doug was like, Joe Borelli, controlled opposition in regards to the Fencer World, and you go, of course he does. I thought that was great.
Umbrella Man, we're not trashing the guy. I do agree. Rush to Judgment, the book and the movie are invaluable research tools, and that Mark Lane brought up many good points. But things might have been different if Mark Lane was actually let do what he tried to do, which was be Lee Harvey Oswald's lawyer in absentia during the Warren Commission. I believe that plan got scuttled for some reason, and we get conspiracy Mark Lane. Even the woman that we did the show about a couple weeks ago, Joe, refresh my memory.
Which one?
Tippit murder witness.
Oh, Markham?
Yes, Helen Markham. People like that. People like Lee Bowers was not a big fan of Mark Lane either. Said he kind of bullied him into saying certain things. But, I'm not trashing Mark Lane. I think anybody that has done anything to go against the official narrative should be praised for what they did. But again, you do understand that some people are let to do this kind of stuff to mislead from the truth. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a matter of history. It happens all the time. COINTELPRO.
Yeah.
Organizations are infiltrated all the time and tried to be turned one way or another. Whether it be, a terrorist cell or a radical organization, you name it. It's been going on, forever. But it definitely got ramped up in the 60s and 70s for sure.
Yeah. And he had some screwery with Mark Lane. I mean, with Lauren Hall, right? And that whole, he was kind of protecting him in a sense. I don't know. You can clear that up. But one thing I was thinking about, especially after listening to Quick Hits, was like, okay, like you say someone comes down on the side of conspiracy, but you promote the wrong conspiracy. Say like the mafia, right? That's a very
Right.
easy one, right? Does that make you control the opposition if you're, say, like deflecting from the actual possible conspirators? And
Only if you know you're being deceptive. Like if you know that the mafia truly was involved and you're trying to say that it was, the oil, big oil money, and that's what you're pushing, and you want to try to push eyes away from the mafia, or if it was the oil guys and you want to push people towards the mafia angle, you can only do that damage if you are prescient of the fact that you know the truth. Somebody telling you or blackmailing you, say, hey, we're gonna out you as being this if you don't say this or you don't say that or you don't do this or you don't do that. That's a whole different ball game. When you get into the blackmail game, which is also, with the with the way the intelligence community was back then and the FBI, it wasn't above them to do things like that.
no, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. But
yes,
I mean,
leverage.
We're getting a ton of great comments here tonight, I must say.
Yes, I'm brain dead tonight for some reason. Not enough sleep this week. It's been a long week, but thank you to the people helping me put words in my mouth.
Yes.
Yeah, so to close it all up, Joe,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to read a little statement from the man himself, Barry Ernest, from a post on his blog, and where he can help us tie it up here. So David Beelan had a light schedule on April 7th as one of a two-man team looking into the true identity of JFK's assassin. A conclusion would say the Warren Commission already had determined by that date Beelan was in Dallas to question witnesses he had recommended back in February. But on this particular Tuesday, he had only 3 appointments. At 9:15 that morning, he talked with Dallas police officer W.E. Barnes, apparently so inconsequential he would not even be mentioned in the Warren report. Then at 4 p.m. came Dealey Plaza witness Barbara Rowland, Arnold's wife, whose words, despite promises to the contrary made by Beelan, would be used to discredit the testimony of her own husband, Arnold, who a month earlier had revealed that he saw 2 men on the 6th floor. And again, that ties back because Craig is the one that found the Rowlands, and that's what they told Craig.
Yep.
And sandwiched in these 2 witnesses at 2:15 was Victoria Adams. A week earlier, on April Fool's Day, coincidentally, Beelan had questioned Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig. Craig would later say that his testimony had been altered and key words had been taken out to make it read different than it should. Again, is this a horrible stenographer using shorthand, or is this more sinister? Victoria Adams would echo much the same regarding her brush with that attorney. I didn't like him, she told me. I thought he was a pompous jerk, full of himself and his own power, impressed with himself, and manipulative. Vicky expanded. When I gave my deposition to the Warren Commission attorney, he was another of those patronizing types. When I went into the office he was using, he did not stand up, as a gentleman would, as was the custom in the South when a woman entered the room. He stayed seated. Then he told me he was going to ask me some questions, and he wanted me to answer them without elaborating. So he went through all of the questions that he had, and I answered. He told me that all my answers and his questions were off the record, quote, and that he would invite a court reporter in to take my actual deposition, and I was to answer exactly what I said to him, with no variations. During the informal part, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and looked at me straight in my eyes and said, "Now, Miss Adams, don't you think you could be wrong? Memory is a funny thing and tricks some people. I looked him straight in the eye and said, I could be, but I'm not. I know what I saw, what I did, and what I heard. He told me at the end of the questioning he would ask me if I had anything to add that I hadn't mentioned up to now. I was supposed to say no, as I had my initial session, but I didn't. As I started speaking, he looked startled, especially when I talked about seeing Jack Ruby on the corner across the street from the depository building. That subject had not come up in the original question and answer session. He thanked me for my time, and I left. But the sting of that encounter would persist for many years. You can imagine I felt stupid and like a fool when I read the book, The Warren Report, when it came out. I felt treated like a moronic child. The echoes of that attorney's words haunted me. Now, Miss Adams, don't you think you could be wrong? I kept asking why the Warren Commission wasn't calling for Sandra Stiles. In fact, during the initial briefing, before my testimony was taken by the attorney, I asked him why they didn't call Sandra Stiles. That appeal seemed logical, especially since Beelan months earlier had cited the importance to determining precisely when Vicky had run down the stairs. Co-worker Sandra Stiles, who had accompanied Vicky, sounded like the perfect candidate to help resolve this issue. Yet, Beelan's response to Vicky's request was inconsistent with his previous comment. He said they didn't need her, Vicky noted. They had me.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, pertaining to Bill Shelley and Billy Lovelady, in her testimony, Vicky is quoted as saying she saw those two men on the first floor when she arrived there within a minute after the assassination. But how could that be if she came down that fast and both men testified they remained outside for several minutes following the shooting? Vicky contends that she did not say she saw them, and the Shelley Lovelady passage was inserted into a later transcript of her testimony to make her appear wrong in her timing. Certainly the commission's unstudied conclusion that Vicky was confused and descended later than she had thought avoided having to explain why she didn't see or hear anyone on the same stairs when, if she was indeed accurate in her timing, Oswald should have been there or been heard. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And I think didn't you say you had something else on Sandra Stiles?
Yes, I actually, perfect segue. I was just pulling it up and I was going to read it. So this is from researcher Sean Murphy in 2008. And this is the year after Vicki Adams passed away in 2007. And this is what she says. I watched the motorcade from a south-facing window on the fourth floor of the Texas School Book Depository. With me was my Scott Forsman colleagues, Victoria Adams, who sadly, in quotations, passed away last year. When the shooting took place, we were not even aware at first it was a shooting. Consistent. It sounded like fireworks. President Kennedy was obscured from our view at the critical moments by tree foliage. And keep in mind that they're 2 floors down from the 6th floor. All I could make out in these moments was the pink of Mrs. Kennedy's suit. Contrary to what Vicky told the Warren Commission, she and I did not go down to the rear stairs within a minute or so of the shooting. First, we lingered by the window for quite some time, trying to determine what was going on outside. Things were very confused. Next, we made an attempt to take the front of the building elevator downstairs. For some reason, however, this elevator, which unlike the rear elevator, went only as high as the 4th floor, did not come when we called it. It was only after trying to call the elevator that we thought of going towards the rear stairs, and even then, we did not proceed very quickly. We were wearing high-heel shoes. While we were in the office area, our view of the rear stairs was blocked by patrons. Anyone could have come down those stairs without us knowing it. All this time, we had absolutely no idea that shots might have come from the depository building. As a result, I was paying very little attention to what was going on inside the building in those first minutes after the assassination. If the warrant report estimated that Vicky and I reached the first floor via the rear stairs some 4 or 5 minutes after the shooting, then I'd have to say that sounds a little conservative. So she's saying 4 or 5 minutes is even conservative.
Wow.
Okay. If anything, it was probably longer. I have no clear recollection of seeing Bill Shelley or Billy Lovelady, in quotations, both of whom I had a passing acquaintance with. So she knew them. Near the rear.
Billy.
Hey, Billy. Come over here with your flannel and your bald head.
You looking good today, Billy? You too, Mr. Shelley?
I had to finish this.
Go ahead. Get your fine ass.
I have no clear recollection of seeing Billy Shelley or Billy Lovelady near the rear of the building when we reached the first floor. I have a vague recollection of seeing them at some point around the front entrance, but it's perfectly possible we did see them where Vicky said we near the freight elevator. I wasn't paying much attention to people in the building. I thought all the action was outside. Interesting, because Vicky Adams used the same term. I want to go where the action was, right?
Yes.
And very interesting. So, from what I understand, is that Sandra Stiles wasn't as outgoing as.
Where does this come from, Joe?
This comes from researcher Sean Murphy in 2008, who emailed with her.
Oh. Sean Murphy is the guy who originally brought up Prayer Man again in the early 2000s. So,
yeah, this is 2008. So,
yeah,
he posted the email, and it's been pretty much regarded as, it's been regarded as legit on the Dead forum. So,
yeah,
it is what it is. But
it's
people,
interesting. Yeah.
People don't push back on it. So let's just say that. It always puzzled me how Vicky seemed to exaggerate the speed with which we went down the rear stairway. Although I was fond of her, I guess she was what you might call a person of drama. You know those kind of.
We know them people. Mm-hmm.
And we're not saying this. I found the version of events she told people somewhat oh boy. Sensualistic.
What?
I can't say it. Sensualizationistic.
What? That's not even a word.
I can't pronounce it. Sensationalistic. There we go. Sensationalistic. So being of sensationalizing things. I'm sorry. Listen, I got like 4 paragraphs through without it.
Sensational. Cars.
Sensationalistic. Yes. Thank you, South of the West. I found the version. And at odds with my own memory of those minutes, I simply stated what I recalled, but I didn't contradict her because I felt I couldn't say what she saw or didn't see just because I didn't recall it the same way did not mean she was in error necessarily. I am not a noble person, that noble of a person that I would have contradicted her, have contradicted her to the interviewers had it been necessary. So she's like, I would have told the truth.
Or she just salty because nobody interviewed poor Sandra Stiles and she got left out of the eye of history.
Possibly. It's definitely a possibility, shit. But it's, Mark Lane could have paid Vicky Adams, but it doesn't seem like she made money from this. She disappeared until Barry Arnott's book almost 40 years, right? So,
Linda, I'll be posting the entire interview on this channel later on tonight for everybody through here as well.
Yeah,
very interesting interview.
One more paragraph, sir.
Yeah.
Why was Vicky the only one called to testify before the Warren Commission? I don't know. My recollection has always been that I was interrogated by a representative from the Warren Commission very briefly in our office, but then there was no follow-up, whereas she was questioned more than once.
See, she's salty.
Possibly. And again, this is the year after she died, right? So Vicki Adams, I mean, like this is when
Right.
Styles came out with this. So you have to take that in the context as well.
Yeah.
And I wondered whether it might have been that her testimony required more investigation and mine was more plausible, or I was less positive in my recollections than she. That is true. She yielded to Vicki Adams's points of events and timelines because she didn't remember. And maybe that's smart of her because she didn't want to get involved. If that's true, however, that I've always stayed shied from the limelight, especially in this particular time in history. Vicki was, SHIED, shied from the limelight. Shield, I don't know if it's a typo. Vicki was a very friendly and gregarious person, while I am more reserved and less outgoing. She may have exaggerated some points while I was cautious about what I said, not wanting to mislead. In some instances, her version might be more accurate. So what to make of this? She goes, she exaggerated.
She sounds salty.
Yeah, but then she says in some instances, her version might be more accurate. So it's like, what to make of this?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a fascinating subject, and
if the FBI and the Warren Commission did their jobs back then and interviewed all these people, we would know exactly what everybody was saying back then. It's easier 50 years after the fact to talk smack about the better looking, the more popular girl, the girl that got all the attention, you know.
Yeah.
But it is a big ass discrepancy when you go from 20 seconds to running away from the window to get down the stairs to like 10 minutes.
Yeah. She's like, I don't think it was 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, that's a huge discrepancy.
Yeah, that's a huge discrepancy. And it also contradicts not just Vicki Adams, but also Elsie Dorman and Dorothy Garner, who said that they left immediately.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think it's very plausible that if Oswald was not on the 6th floor and he was per man and he did hear the shots and kind of realize whatever, that would link up with him if the 2nd floor lunchroom encounter did happen, and I'm not sure that it did. It could have been on the 1st floor, right? It links up with him and Vicki Adams not seeing him come down, right? Because he was on the 1st floor. It's very interesting to ponder. I know Per Man, the book by Bart Camp, has a lot of good stuff on this as well.
Yeah, definitely
what's this?
That as well.
What's this? What's Toxic Unicorn?
Sounds like a strain of some very good weed. I don't know. Hey man, you had any of that Toxic Unicorn, bro?
If I'm down, if Colleen's gonna send it to me.
You grow a horn on your head and start farting rainbows, bro. I'm telling you.
Let's see. Dave said selected.
Uncle Dave.
This testimony was simply a prosecutor's brief, not a trial to establish facts.
Facts. Uncle Dave, all he does is spit facts.
Yeah, it's similar, Linda. And yeah, she's like, I'm right, but I yield to Vicki Adams. It's like, okay, it's one of those JFK things.
And honored to have Linda in the house. She's a very accomplished and esteemed researcher who goes deep on some folks.
Thank you, Linda.
Colleen says Oregon, baby. So maybe is there a town in Oregon called Toxic Unicorn? Or maybe it's a club.
I don't know. They'll have to give us more context on that one. But it's. I think it's been a very interesting analysis on this lady and some of the other ladies on the stairs, and nice. Yeah, thank you for wishing everyone happy holidays on Quick Hits. I respect that.
Be funny if my hand actually came into the picture on your side and handed it to you.
Do it on this side.
There
No,
we go.
other side. What
What are you
Other
talking
side.
about? Other side? Over here?
Yeah.
You're not over there. You're
Yeah,
here.
I was. Yeah.
Trust me,
Oh,
we're
on my
good
side,
right
yeah.
here.
On my side,
I-
I guess we're
Your
backwards.
screen is jacked up, bro. I don't know where I am on your screen.
Bro, you create all the background images, so
I am the artistic director of the Lone Gunman podcast. Thank you, bro.
yes, sir.
But anyway, folks, that's about all we got for you today. We truly appreciate you being here and hanging out. And if
Yes.
you like what you heard, make sure that you are liking and subscribing and hitting the little bell thing to get notified when we go live or when we drop a show otherwise. Joe, you got anything else to leave the good people with today?
No, I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We were, trying to segue into people that had alleged testimonies changed, and we enjoyed this show. It's a very interesting part of the assassination that deep dive in. And Silk City, what's up? And Roger, what's up?
Thank you, folks, for hanging out with us. This has been episode number 286 of the Lone Gunman podcast. Keep the conversation going if you want to. Hang out here all you want. But we are going to call it a night and go get some Betty Bye, sleepy time, good times. And we'll do it again next week. Right, Joe? I guess?
Yes, sir. Always.
Yeah, we'll do it again next week. We love you guys. Thank you again for hanging out. Thank you again to all who hit us up with the supers. Much appreciated. So for Joe, the air guitar beast from the Northeast, till next time, folks, these are your boys.
Peace. Have a good weekend, guys.
Yes.